In a world where the dead never stop coming and the living are pushed to their limits, every moment becomes a battle to stay alive. Heroes rise, humanity falls, and survival is the only law that remains. This is where every zombie story begins. Welcome to the ultimate zombie recap season. A man infected with an unknown virus staggered back to his village, and starving like he hadn't eaten in 10 years, he devoured the food his wife had prepared, while his bloodshot eyes locked onto her neck as if death itself were calling to him. And by nightfall, his veins swelled, his body twisted, and with their child beside him, the mutation finally took over. Yet his unsuspecting wife entered the room, only to find him hunched over biting at something. And when he turned his grim, distorted face toward her, she froze in terror before he lunged at her as a fully turned zombie, then burst from the room and attacked the villagers. And this horror had begun days earlier when a group of soldiers hijacked an ocean-going merchant ship to steal foreign firearms. But as one soldier carried a crate, a man suddenly went mad and leapt onto him, forcing others to drag the infected soldier away unknowingly, setting the tragedy in motion. And the stolen weapons were later seized by Lord Kaneko-kun of the Imperial Court, who accused the group of treason and reported them to the king. And despite brutal torture, they refused to reveal their mastermind until he appeared himself, the king's eldest son, the crown prince, who had taken the weapons not to overthrow his father, but to eliminate traitors. Yet the paranoid king rejected his explanation and charged him with treason, leaving the prince no choice but to commit suicide by disembowelment to protect his men and their families. But before dying, he wrote a final note to his younger brother in the Qing dynasty, asking him to return to Joseon and rescue his sister-in-law from the palace. And upon receiving the note, Li Qing traveled to Joseon with his entourage. But the moment they stepped off the ship, they found no one waiting. And though raised in Qing, he was still a prince of Joseon, so they entered the nearby village only to find it abandoned, burned and littered with charred corpses, clear signs of catastrophe, and with no one to meet them, they prepared to stay the night until supposed royal guards finally arrived. Yet Li Qing quickly sensed something wrong. So many men came without a single spare horse, as if planning to drag him back, and their murderous aura proved they were not guards at all, prompting him to draw his sword. And as the killers attacked, a fierce battle broke out until suddenly, a zombie burst from the darkness and sank its teeth into one assassin's neck. Immediately after that, an eerie hissing echoed through the night as countless zombies poured down from the rooftops, the once peaceful villagers now fully transformed into bloodthirsty creatures, attacking anything they saw. And when one of them leapt at Li Qing, he blocked it with his sword, instantly realizing these villagers had lost all humanity. And with a single decisive strike, he severed the zombie's head, while the assassins were overwhelmed one after another, and Li Qing's entourage twisted through the chaos, dodging lunging bodies. But the horde was so large, they were surrounded in moments, and just as Li Qing swung again, an arrow screamed through the air. A woman stood atop a rooftop firing a special arrow that boomed loudly and drew the zombies away. Moments later, several men appeared, moving with precision, striking at the zombies' weak points and swiftly clearing the area. These were the loyal men of Li Qing's late brother, led by Park Jong-shu, who had long known that Kaneko-kun was plotting something sinister and would surely send killers after Li Qing, so they arrived to protect him and explained that the villagers had been turned into zombies that feared sunlight and moved only at night, and that the only way to kill them was beheading or piercing the heart, followed by burning the bodies. And because the creatures were extremely sensitive to sound, they had to leave quickly. Park Jong-shu then led Li Qing to a hidden refuge where the remaining survivors sheltered, while others on the brink of mutation were locked inside cells, ready to turn at any moment. Meanwhile, Kaneko-kun carried out his own plan, feeding a zombie hidden in a cellar before bringing the king's consort to the spot, then releasing the creature upon her. And by the next morning, she sat among the other concubines at the royal breakfast table, infected and mutating, as the king dined unaware until her veins darkened. Her eyes turned white. Her body convulsed, and she suddenly lunged at him, biting his arm. But with Kaneko-kun suppressing all news of the outbreak, the court believed she was merely an assassin from the rebels. And no one realized the king himself was now infected. While Li Qing prepared to return to the palace, carrying the villagers' plea for troops to eliminate the zombies, a request he readily accepted. Park Jong-shu and his men accompanied him for protection, but the region had been sealed off as a plague zone, and no villagers were allowed to leave, so only Li Qing and his entourage proceeded, and upon reaching the palace, he finally met his father, after many years, immediately reporting the zombie infestation, only to learn the entire court had been kept ignorant by Kaneko-kun. And when Li Qing urged his father to send troops and allow him to lead the extermination, the king agreed, but as Li Qing prepared to depart with his sister-in-law, Kaneko-kun blocked his path, declaring that the king had withdrawn the military order, and warning Li Qing to return to the Qing dynasty at once, or face dire consequences. The entire court was already under Kaneko-kun's control, so Li Qing dared not act rashly when suddenly the Qing dynasty ambassador arrived and every official knelt in greeting, and to entertain them, the king arranged a grand celebration, unaware that zombies had already slipped into every corner of the palace, as maids and servants became infected, and even the king himself began to mutate, while Kaneko-kun's scheme neared completion, and outside the undead gathered in clusters. Yet the revelers inside continued singing and dancing, without noticing a thing, until the mutating king staggered onto the dance floor, and the crowd mistook it for part of the show. But the court lady dancing beside him sensed something was wrong though, by the time she realized it was far too late, and the hall fell silent in horror, while Kaneko-kun alone remained calm, as he had orchestrated everything, and soldiers rushed forward to check, but none dared touch the king due to his status. And that was when Li Qing arrived, and instantly recognized that his father had been infected. But before he could act, Kaneko-kun drove his sword straight through the king, killing the ruler of Joseon in front of the Qing ambassadors, and declaring that the king had become a zombie, and that from this moment the nation would be renamed, and he himself would rule Joseon independent from Qing. While outside, a massive swarm of zombies flooded the palace, and Kaneko-kun escaped with his prepared entourage waiting for dawn, when he planned to let his troops clear the palace and establish his new dynasty. But Li Qing had no time to mourn as he charged into the zombie horde, rescued his sister-in-law hiding beneath a table, and fled with her on horseback after his attendant arrived with mounts, then tracked down the leader of the Praetorian Guard, ordering him to rally every soldier to hold back the zombies or the entire palace would fall. And before he finished speaking, the undead surged forward, forcing them to hack their way out as Li Qing dashed to the dungeon to free the imprisoned villagers, while the royal guard built layer after layer of defenses, only to see each one shattered as the sheer number of zombies overwhelmed them, and the guards fought to the death as the undead cornered them. And in the dungeon, the cell doors could not hold, and zombies burst inside, but a monk pried open a hidden door, allowing Li Qing and Park Jong-shi to block the entrance and buy time for the others to escape, and eventually they all made it out alive, while the Praetorian Guard commander fought until dawn, suffering heavy casualties, and even he was bitten on the arm. But when sunlight finally broke, the zombies recoiled and fled into the shadows, and Kaneko-kun seized this moment, declaring it was time to destroy all zombies in daylight and establish a new regime, and the ministers submitted under pressure. Yet, as Kaneko-kun delivered his triumphant speech, a zombie suddenly lunged at him, and though he dispatched it quickly, everyone's eyes dropped to his palm, where fresh blood dripped, revealing the truth. Kaneko-kun had just been bitten. The ministers instantly changed their expressions and prepared to kill Kaneko-kun. But he was a hardened military general, and a few court scholars were no match for him, and he slaughtered them all without hesitation, even his loyal inner circle falling before him as everything he had plotted collapsed and refusing to accept defeat. He cut off his infected arm and swallowed countless drugs to suppress the virus, turning himself into a half-human, half-zombie monster, while Li Qing, who had escaped the dungeon, regrouped with the Praetorian Guard, and to prevent another zombie attack at night, ordered the commander to summon the border troops for support, as they stayed in the palace to hold the undead back. And after discussion, they planned to lure every zombie into the king's hall, using drums surround the place, with dry firewood, soak it in flammable oil, and burn them all once the hall was full. And as night fell, the zombies poured out again, turning the palace into their hunting ground, as everyone rushed into the hall to carry out the plan, intending to gather every undead creature inside and destroy them with flames. But when Li Qing volunteered to stay behind and ignite the fire, Park Jong-shi stopped him, revealing bite marks on his neck, saying a nation cannot survive without its monarch, leaving the others devastated, yet forced to abandon him. And as they reached the palace wall, the sound of drums echoed from the hall as Park Jong-shi, using the last of his consciousness, continued to pound the drum, drawing every zombie inside. And when the hall was packed, he prepared to ignite the fuse, but a boot crushed it underfoot, and the monstrous half-zombie Kaneko-kun stepped from the shadows, destroying their final hope, before brutally killing Park Jong-shi. And with the fire failing to ignite, Li Qing sensed something was wrong, knowing there was only one chance, and charged toward the hall on horseback, weaving his blade with deadly precision, carving a path through the undead until he reached the interior, where he found Park Jong-shi dead, and Kaneko-kun seated arrogantly upon the dragon throne, silently watching, as Li Qing resumed beating the drum, drawing the zombies back into the hall, while cutting them down, until he attempted to light the fire, and Kaneko-kun attacked with enhanced strength from the virus, completely overpowering him. And outside Park Deok-hee realized Li Qing was in danger and fired a flaming arrow into the hall, where it lodged into a pillar, and Li Qing leapt onto a beam, seized the arrow, and hurled it downward, instantly igniting the fire, as the stench of burning flesh filled the hall, and Li Qing climbed toward the roof, only to find Kaneko-kun pursuing him, and the two clashed once more, with Li Qing repeatedly overwhelmed by Kaneko-kun's ferocious zombie-driven power. And just as Kaneko-kun delivered a killing strike, Li Qing dodged and twisted back onto the rooftop, driving a blade into Kaneko-kun's chest, knowing the heart and head were a zombie's vital points. Yet Kaneko-kun tried to drag him into death with him until Li Qing tore free, grabbed a massive 40-meter blade and plunged it down as the tiles shattered and both men fell. But Li Qing caught a beam and pulled himself up to safety, and at that moment, the reinforcements arrived armed with foreign rifles, swiftly eliminating the remaining zombies as soldiers and civilians erupted in cheers, celebrating the rise of their new king. And this film, blending ancient history with modern zombie horror, delivers a unique take on the genre, and despite the protagonist's plot armor, it remains a zombie movie worth watching. So if you're interested, check it out, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you next time. Up next, things get even crazier. The zombies hit harder, the escapes get tighter, and the twist is even more insane. And trust me, if this story shocked you, the next one will absolutely blow your mind. It is already on the channel, so go check it out right now.